Rabbi Andrea London, Rabbi here at Beth Emet, the Free Synagogue, and wanted to host the Poor People's Campaign because it's a really powerful new movement that is trying to gather people regardless of race, religious background, anything that might separate us, gender, sexual orientation, to come together to say we need to create a society of justice and peace and love, and we're not going to be separated by anything that the rest of the larger powers that be might try to do. We are a new unsettling force for liberation, a new unsettling force that believes in justice and peace and compassion, and we're coming together to create that.
Amazing work in Advocacy. Y'all didn't know, but I'm going to tell you anyway. You're doing some amazing work in Advocacy. And we want to see this amazing work lifted up all across the state and other clusters all across the state. We want to see this work lifted up so that we can understand that at the end of the day that we all do share a concern that if one of us suffers, then we all suffer. Or are you willing to be uncomfortable with me? Yeah. Are we willing to be uncomfortable? Are we willing to not be liked? Are we willing to be talked about? Are we willing to have our names and our faces and our profiles talked about for something that is worth fighting for? Yes. I begin by saying and reminding everyone that the holy God of the universe comes and gathers us together as a marvelous array of people with different backgrounds, different stories and different narratives, yet we are still holding together a certain commitment, a certain connection, and a conviction towards the work of this thing that we call the Poor People's Campaign. It's really, really important to understand. One of the things that undergirds the campaign is the notion that we have to do this together. The notion that we are people coming together with different stories and backgrounds and ideas, ethnicities, races, genders and gender identities, conforming and non-conforming, geographies, locations, educational levels, and even socioeconomic statuses, but still choosing to come and to work together. We are more interested, as William Barton would oftentimes say, we are more interested in the 51% that we have in common than the 49% that we don't.
To have an organization like the Moran Center in the community, with dedicated attorneys representing our youth in juvenile delinquency and criminal proceedings to ensure that every child has equal access to justice. Outside of the courtroom, the Moran Center also represents children in the classroom because we believe that every child deserves an equitable education.
That's right.
The Moran Center represents children with special needs, learning disabilities, mental health issues, working to ensure that these children have the additional supports they need in the classroom to succeed. We also know that in our schools, Black children are disproportionately expelled and suspended. The Moran Center represents children facing exclusion from school. What makes the Moran Center's model so unique is that in addition to these legal services that we provide, each child and their family is given a dedicated social worker to help them navigate the social and emotional challenges they may be experiencing, giving them the therapy they need to cope with traumas like abuse that may be informing their behavior. The advocacy work that the Moran Center is doing is restoring lives in this community. And I want to be clear that our clients are strong and resilient, capable and bright, but they need a lot of our help. And while I may be biased, but the Moran Center is great at what they do, they cannot do this work alone. I understand that systemic racism and poverty are massive issues, and that a lot of times it can feel like our own personal efforts are not enough to make an impact. But I'm here today to let you know that you can make a difference. Every single person in this room can be an advocate for the children we serve. I don't know if there are any attorneys in the room. I have two very specific ways that you can advocate for the clients we serve.
All right.
First, you can volunteer at our expungement and sealing help desk at the Skokie Courthouse and help our clients seal their criminal records, helping them to overcome barriers to education, housing and employment. Another way you can help out, attorneys in the room, is you can volunteer at our new school-based civil legal clinic and represent families' civil legal needs, helping them to address issues like housing and immigration that can impede a child's ability to stay in and succeed in school.
Right.
For all of my non-attorneys in the room, I have plenty of ways that you too can advocate for the children the Moran Center serves. You can be an advocate by digging a little deeper into your pockets and making financial contributions to the Moran Center because you believe, like we do, that every child deserves representation no matter their ability to pay. You can also be an advocate by volunteering at a local school here in Evanston as a breakfast helper, helping our children, who so many come to school hungry every day. You can also be an advocate by joining an affordable housing coalition and working to ensure that our clients and their families are not pushed out of Evanston because they can't afford it. I'm not done yet. You can be an advocate by going to city budget hearings and demanding that no cuts be made to human services because we all know those cuts hurt our most vulnerable residents. You can be an advocate by educating yourself on the ideology of white supremacy. And when I say educate yourself, I don't mean just going to ask your black friend to educate you. I mean you doing the reading and the analyzing and the self-reflecting to have the uncomfortable conversations with your friends and your family that challenge the very basis of whiteness and check your privilege. All of these ways and many more I could say here today is all of us working together to put justice in action. Justice in action is all of us working together collectively to ensure that every child in this community, no matter their race or their class, is able to grow and learn and thrive and make mistakes without being discarded. So I'm here today to ask all of you to join with the Moran Center as advocates for every child in this community. Because if we're going to combat the evils of racism and poverty, it's going to require the active engagement of every single person in this community. We can't just keep talking about it. We have to put in the work to make sure that this community is actually being the open, welcoming, equitable community it claims itself to be.
Now I bring you greetings as a member of the board of the Just Harvest and Pastor Good News Community Church, which is on the north side of Chicago in the Rogers Park community. We are excited to be invited here to tell you about the work that's happening just across the border outside of Evanston and the Rogers Park community. So I bring you greetings from an organization that's been around for over 20 plus years who is on fire of feeding the hungry. We feed 365 days a week, over 100 people every single day, including a food pantry every week. We believe in breaking bread and restoring community, one person, one mouth, one stomach at a time. We are called to end hunger, not just by feeding people, but to empower them to feed themselves. In the business of economic and community development with urban gardens and programs for kids, as well as to help work with the justice system around hunger, around social injustices, about community awareness and community building. We are tired of the systematic suffering of the people who cannot bring voice to themselves. So we have decided as an organization to bring voice for them. Not only just give them enough to eat, but give them enough spirit food, enough working food for them to start feeding for themselves. for them to tend to themselves, for them to understand the justice that they can do for themselves. So we extend our reach to other organizations and congregations in the North Shore to help provide services for those that are least among us. We talk about justice all the time, but it's more than just talking. We have to be about it. We have to dream it. We have to live it. We have to be on the margins for it. The scriptures tells us a couple of things. It says the Lord requires of thee to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. What can we do? But we could demand justice. Hold elected officers accountable and get up and do something with your voice, with your feet, with your hands. Make them work through your faith. That's right. Each community has something to give. I just know right now in Rogers Park we have raised $150,000 to find a killer for a person who has been killed. But I still have people who cannot eat. I have schools that have been underfunded. I have people that have no clothes and no housing. So if we can raise $150,000 to find a killer, surely we could raise over that to improve our schools, to improve our community, to improve the housing conditions over there. We must learn to refocus what we put our money to, but for purpose and for possibilities. We've had so many testimonies that come into the kitchen. For those who are excited, they have a place to come and eat each and every day. No matter rain, snow, sleet, or hail, even on the holidays, we are open to feed. We've heard testimonies of people who just had a hard time and just trying to figure it out. We have people who relocated for domestic violence or just trying to find a better opportunity. But we open our doors to do justice. We open our doors not only to feed stomachs, but to feed souls and to feed minds. And so we're excited about what we do each and every day. As you heard the Moran Center talk about the injustices and advocacy work that they do for their youth, we try to do the same thing for community development. We serve a pocket of people in the Rogers Park community where the social economic lines are just defined just when you cross the viaduct, just across Clark Street, just over Juneway, and then we see a whole different population. But we are still here deciding for ourselves that we would do justice across the street and beyond, that we would do justice no matter who's in the area. If the area doesn't look good across the street, then it don't look good no street. And so we are empowered to do justice. So what can you do? As we are part of this Poor People's Campaign, what can you do? What can you do? You can come and serve the hungry. You can devote your time, your talents, and your treasure to the work that we do at A Just Harvest. We are trying to do a new thing in community wellness. We are looking to put a new structure for economic development in that pocket over at Rogers Park. We are trying to find another way to combat food deserts that's all over the communities. And so we're looking to figure out ways to do justice for hunger, as people do justice for the criminal system, if you do justice for schools, if you do justice for our children. We want to feed stomachs and souls. We believe that systematic racism and injustices has to stop. And if we don't take care of the least among us, if we don't feed those who are hungry or clothe those who are naked, shame on us.
That's right.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Darlene, and I'm part of the Evanston branch of the Poor People's Campaign. Thank you to everyone's bravery and strength to be in this space. We recognize that not everyone had the same journey into this space, and we thank you for taking the risk to be here. We hope you feel comfort, information, love, and your essence either reignited or fueled. Our goal for this rally was to educate, celebrate, learn, and build community. This rally is meant to bring together those affected and allies alike to speak truth in such a way that people desire to take an action role in this movement. And that is what this is, a movement, not a moment. It's the slow burn of the community. It's the slow burn of the community building, listening to our neighbors, knowing our neighbors, and loving our neighbors that makes this grassroots movement special. We aim to be more than passionate individuals, but a coalition of resources, knowledge, and talents that are ready for action, but our constant presence during the time in between times. To paraphrase DeRay McKisson's, people affected have always had a voice. It's about getting that voice heard. As we hold multiple identities, sometimes we are called to be the voice that speaks through words, song, dance, art, relationships. Other times we are called to be comrades, allies, to listen, believe, and posture yourself to use your privilege to make sure others listen. It is never the job of the marginalized to dismantle the oppressive system, nor educate all allies, to build bottom up, to have a moral fusion coalition.
So here in the North Cook Lake County area, we've created a working cluster group. This cluster specifically attempts to do this work by meeting twice a month and creating interest or affinity groups. But our cluster is incomplete. We need more people to join so that we can create deep and lasting roots, to educate, to plan, to learn together, and to create a communal readiness. We need you. We are a new, unsettling force. We are a new